For 2,000 years, the name Judas has meant one thing, right? Traitor. But what if that story, one of the most foundational stories in Western history, isn't nearly as simple as we think? Today, we're going to deconstruct the villain. We're going to go back to the original sources and see how this figure was actually built. And it all really begins right here. In the Gospel of Matthew, a guilt-ridden Judas tries to give back the blood money, and this is the ice-cold reply he gets from the priests. This single, brutal line is such a key moment in a story that has shaped everything from art and culture to politics for millennia.
Okay, so first things first, let's just establish the version we all know. The archetype, the ultimate traitor, the villain at the very heart of the Christian passion narrative.
Yeah, this is the one, the popular version that's baked into our culture. Judas Iscariot, the greedy disciple who sells out his master for a pouch of silver coins and then seals the deal with that infamous kiss in the Garden of Gethsemane. His name isn't just a name anymore, it's literally a word for betrayal. But how solid is this story when you actually start to poke at it?
So where does this story even come from? Well, we have to go back and unpack the Gospels themselves. And let me tell you, that is where things immediately start to get complicated. Now here is something absolutely crucial to understand. Modern scholars don't read the Gospels like their biographies, or like a minute-by-minute historical record. They were written decades after the events, by different early Christian communities. Think of them as faith documents, each with its own message, its own purpose. They're not objective history. And get this, the Gospels can't even agree on why he did it. Matthew's Gospel points to simple greed, plain and simple. But then you read Luke and John, and they introduce a totally different idea, that Judas wasn't even in control, that he was literally possessed by Satan. I mean, was it greed, or was he a pawn of the devil? That's a pretty fundamental disagreement right there.
And the mystery just keeps getting deeper, right down to his name. Iscariot isn't a family name like Smith or Jones. It's a puzzle. One theory says it means man from Kerioth, which would make him a Judean, an outsider among the other disciples from Galilee. Another theory links it to Sicarius. That's Latin for dagger man, a name for violent Jewish revolutionaries. We don't even know for sure what his name implies.
And if you want the perfect example of just how messy this all is, look no further than how Judas dies, because the Bible itself gives us two completely different and equally gruesome stories. In Matthew, he's overcome by remorse and hangs himself. But then in the book of Acts, it's this bizarre, horrific scene where his body explodes in a field he bought with the money. So which is it? A tragic suicide or a grotesque supernatural punishment? So you might be asking, if the original texts are this contradictory, how did the image of Judas become so terrifyingly simple, so black and white? Well, the answer wasn't in what people read, but in what they saw. The monster we know was really built in stone and paint.
I mean, think about it. For most of history, the average person couldn't read the Gospels for themselves. So the medieval church had a challenge. How do you make the consequences of sin feel real, visceral, and absolutely unforgettable? The answer was art.
And boy, did they deliver. Church art became the primary storyteller, and it did not hold back. Look at this sculpture from Freiburg Minster. The artist actually combined both biblical death accounts into one grotesque image. He's hanging, but his bowels are also spilling out. The silver coins, the symbol of his greed, are falling uselessly from his hand. And there's often a demon right there, literally grabbing his soul to drag it down to hell. These were not subtle messages, okay? At Autun Cathedral, it wasn't enough for him to just hang himself. The carving shows actual devils pulling on the rope to get the job done faster. This was a visual sermon, cementing Judas's image as this monstrous figure who was not only condemned by heaven, but was gleefully claimed by hell. And then, of course, literature took this image and ran with it. In his famous Inferno, Dante Alighieri saves the absolute worst punishment for the greatest traitors in history. And deep in the ninth, the lowest circle of hell, Satan himself is chewing on three figures for eternity. Brutus and Cassius, who betrayed Caesar, and right there in the center, in the most painful position, Judas Iscariot. Now, this monstrous caricature, it didn't just stay on the walls of cathedrals or in the pages of books. It bled out into the real world, and the consequences were devastating and truly tragic. Over the centuries, the character of Judas, the greedy, disloyal, money-obsessed traitor, was essentially weaponized and fused with anti-Semitic stereotypes. Dante's name for hell's lowest circle, Judeca, was also a term for Jewish ghettos.
The falsely accused French officer Alfred Dreyfus was smeared as Judas Dreyfus, and by the 20th century, Nazi propaganda was explicitly using Judas as the archetype for their vile portrayal of Jewish people. It is a direct, horrific line from a religious narrative to racial persecution.
But believe it or not, the story doesn't end there. Even as this image of the ultimate villain was being cemented in the culture, new discoveries began to challenge everything, kicking off a dramatic reevaluation in the 20th century.
Okay, so this is a real game changer. In the 1970s, this ancient text was rediscovered in the Egyptian desert. It was part of a different early Christian movement called Gnosticism. This text, which was condemned as heresy way back in 180 AD, was called the Gospel of Judas, and it told a completely different story.
And just look at this contrast. In this version, Judas isn't the villain, he's the hero. He's presented as the only apostle who truly understands Jesus' secret teachings. And the betrayal, it's not a betrayal at all. It's a necessary act that Jesus himself asks for to help him escape his physical body and complete his divine mission. This discovery just complicates everything we thought we knew.
And you can see how this new complexity has inspired artists ever since. Modern culture has wrestled with who Judas was. He's been imagined as a reluctant collaborator, a pragmatist worried about Roman backlash in Jesus Christ Superstar, and even the subject of a heavenly trial that asks a powerful question: does he also deserve forgiveness? So, think about where we started, with a simple, one-dimensional traitor. But after peeling back 2,000 years of theology and art and politics, that simple villain is gone. We're left not with a neat answer, but with this profound and lingering question. Was Judas an agent of Satan, or was he a necessary instrument of God? The most enduring part of his story might be that we still don't know the answer.